This is Whitley Strieber, and this is Dreamland. You have reached the edge of the world. Before we start, I'd like to let you know that you can now get signed copies of Whitley Strieber books from the unknowncountry.com store. Just go to unknowncountry.com, click on the store tab on the right on Whitley's books, and you will see the following books available in signed copies: Communion, The Fourth Mind, Them, the original edition of The Key, A New World, Jesus, A New Vision, and my book of poetry, A Hidden Garden. So enjoy these beautiful books in signed editions. And remember, The Key is never going to be republished in this edition, and we are slowly running out. So if you want that collector's item, get it today. Well, we've got another ultra high strangeness dreamland this week. It equals or perhaps even exceeds the MacTani's dreamland of 2 weeks ago. MacTani's, as you remember, if you watched it or listened to it, seems to have come back during contact in the desert. He was a writer who died in 2010, very young, at the age of 35. It just published a book called The Crypto-Terrestrials, which is essentially exploring the idea that Earth is the generator of most all of this, that it's not necessarily beings coming from another planet only, but it is also and primarily an earthly experience, because life on planet Earth isn't just physical. It moves off into all kinds of different levels, some of which we understand and know, some of which we do not. This show moves on down that road in an absolutely amazing way. Two things happen in the show. The first one, you will hear from our guest, Mark Sims, who's been on Dreamland just once before, an extraordinary man, as you will hear. I'm not going to introduce him now. He will be introduced during the course of the show in all of his absolutely amazing life and life story. A tremendously accomplished human being on many levels. In any case, Mark will describe for you up close and personal an experience of communion as it really is. It involves what Anne Strieber suggested from the very beginning, why she called our book Communion. She knew even in 1986 when we were writing it what this was really all about. Amazing woman. I sure didn't know. Anyway, he will describe an experience of communion which involves your body being entered and shared. I've learned to do that. I share my body with Anne. I share, look at this. I mean, the two rings, one body, two people. And she comes and goes. Others do too. I'm used to it. It's no big deal for me. It's part of my life. And Mark will describe what it felt like for him when it first happened. Exactly the same feeling I had when it first happened to me. It's really frightening, but you get used to it. I'm getting emails often now from people who are having this experience, and they're absolutely terrified. The scientists and the academics talk very flippantly about ontological shock. Oh, we'll get over that. I mean, we'll get used to this. No, they won't. They have no idea what the shock that they think they know all about really is. It's much more intimate than they think, and it's much more encompassing. You know, last week on Joe Rogan, Anna Paulina Luna, the congressman, talked a bit about this, or sort of in this direction. So I thought it was a very good conversation, very interesting. It's worth watching. I wish Joe would have me on sometime, but I think maybe he's scared of me. I don't know. But in any case, Anna Paulina Luna is going in the right direction. And this means that there are people within the government who know and understand more about this than those who have been speaking publicly so far do. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those who have been speaking publicly. On the contrary, I'm grateful for their contribution and their courage. But there are other people, there must be, who have a deeper understanding of this. And that's good because that means that we're going to go along and we'll be all right. It's just going to be a little iffy from time to time in the near future. And we're going obviously through the very environmental uh, chaos that the visitors warned about in the Key and that I wrote about in Superstorm. That's all happening. It's going to happen, and we might as well just get used to it and get ready to experience a lot of disruption on many different levels. But I'm not about kvetching about this disruption. I'm about surviving that, surviving the shock, and going on into a wonderful new life. And speaking of new, let's go on to Mark Sims, and then we're going to see the tape of me. And bear in mind, 5 video experts now have looked at this. This is not a video artifact. It is some kind of an energy that comes around my body. You'll see it. It's quite extraordinary. When I'm talking about disclosure, in order to, I think, to emphasize the words, because I think they're right. I think that's the whole point here. And this energy disappears as soon as I'm finished talking about it. And we go on to other things. So it's a 12-minute video in the middle of the show, and you're not going to believe it. I mean, it's going to knock your socks off. It knocked mine off. It knocked Mark's off. And there will be people in the comments who explain it away, but they will be wrong. I know that because I've some of the best video experts I know, and I know a lot of good ones, have looked at this, and it is not explainable as a video artifact. If anything, it's a Whitley artifact. Let's go on and welcome my friend Mark Sims.
Thank you, Whitley. It's an honor and a pleasure being here as always.
Well, it's good for you to be back, but you've been on the show one time before, and but a long time ago. And so, I in the introduction, I said that we would be talking about an extremely strange video, and we're going to do that a little later, folks. I am still working on the video. I have sent it now to what 6 or 7 different experts, and nobody nobody can figure it out. So we'll see it later.
Yeah, it's worth waiting for and watching. It's quite an unusual video, for sure. And Whitley, I am really surprised that that video, having been made 5 years ago, I had only seen it for the first time just a couple of months ago when it came to my attention. Um, and I went back in my archive to look at it. And this was an interview that I did with you back in 2020 for the Harmonic Convergence 2020 event. And that was a 10-day online streaming event that was done live for the most part. And you were the second to the last interview for the 10-day event. And it was such an honor and a pleasure then having you on that, on that production. But this was a studio. I had a production staff, and I was sitting in a studio interviewing you, but I did not have a screen in which I could see you. I was in front of a camera. I had an earbud in my ear, as you'll see, and and I'm interviewing you looking into a camera, but I'm not seeing your face. And no one told me until just a couple of months ago, somebody who was watching it had reminded me of our interview and how you had morphed during the course of this interview at a key moment in the interview into this, light being or something. It was very, very strange and quite remarkable, and I've never seen anything like it. So anyway, that happened 5 years ago, but because I had not seen it and no one brought it to my attention, at least I can't recall. Um, I had only seen it for the first time a couple of months ago as well, and then I reached out to you and sent it to you. So it's quite a
Yes.
remarkable video.
Well, it is. And when I got it, I thought, this looks impossible because this material, this bright white material that you'll see later, folks, is not on the video. It's on my face. It's on me. And
Right.
you can tell a couple of times when I touch my face, it just disappears like it's sort of a delicate kind of balance. I had no sense of it at all when I wish I could say, oh, yeah, that was my light being coming to the surface, but I'm sorry, I didn't have any sense of it at all. But it's there, and it's not the only video like that of strange things happening around me. And, I've been doing this strange business with the visitors now for 30 years, and most of my life I've been doing the meditation that ultimately they perfected, that I learned originally in their Gurdjieff Foundation, and I've been deeply engaged in esoteric work, not just study but actual work. And I guess this is part of it. I mean, this is something that somehow is connected with it, and as always, the human being is wearing filters that we don't really know what we are, where we are. But anyway, we'll get back to that. Let's now go to something else, which is you, Mark Sims. I want to go to talk about the I want to really introduce you to my audience, and in a new way, because you have had one of the more remarkable lives in this whole field, and you didn't start it, you didn't expect it at all. What happened to you?
Well, this happened back in 2012. At that point in my life, I was living in Michigan. I was retired. I had sold a business back in 1999 that I started in 92 called Netrex, and it was an internet security company. It was the largest independent, privately owned internet security company um, that I sold, and at a time that was very fortuitous in 99. I retired. I took about 5 years off, enjoying my first retirement. I started a second company called Nanorex, which was the world's first 3D um, modeling system for molecular scale engineering. So it was the first 3D modeling program for designing things with atomic resolution, where you could literally build things one atom at a time. And the 3D modeling system provided tools to make modeling machines out of atoms much more efficient and even possible. It was really impossible. The only programs back in those days that allowed you to model things with atomic precision were traditional chemistry modeling tools that were meant to allow you to model things that had maybe a few thousand atoms most, and to do more, kind of molecular, mechanical, or I'm sorry, you know, um, chemistry-based analysis and quantum-based analysis, and the tools back then were very crude. This tool or this program that was called NanoEngineer 1 was the first program that allowed you to model things of consequent size. So here, this would be like 1 million atoms. And 1 million atoms would be involved in creating nanomechanical assemblies with gears and housings and struts and all sorts of things, kind of like traditional mechanical engineering, but on a atomistic scale. And then providing all the tools necessary for minimization of those assemblies. That's, when you're designing things with atomic precision, you've got to um, define all the bonding geometries between neighboring atoms. And these atoms that are bonded to each other have a specific distance through
Right.
which they are bonded. If they're too far apart, the bond won't be maintained. You're breaking the bond. If it's too close, then that bond will, want to push away the two atoms. So a minimization tool, for instance, is very critical in nanoscale design to adjust all the atoms after you created all the bonds so that they would relax into their optimal minimum energy state. And then from there, you could turn over those 3D models to a molecular mechanical analysis to simulate motion. If you had an input driving a gear to, make it operate at, through molecular mechanics, we provided the tools necessary to define those energies and drivers into a molecular mechanical system and run a simulation to see if.
Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to just interrupt you for a moment for two reasons. One is we're going to take a break in a moment, and
Okay.
two is this: in 1987, I was a member of Bud Hopkins's uh, group of his abductee group, and one of the abductees said something in 1987 that she had heard in the 70s from the visitors while she was lying in a hammock, and one of them was near her, but she couldn't see it, but she could hear it, and it communicated to her something that I think will surprise you. It said, "We rearrange atoms." Now you do too.
Yeah, this was a tool that allowed you to arrange atoms in any geometry that was physically possible. And if it
Now I
wasn't,
can't imagine. Is that available publicly? Is that or is it gone behind the curtain?
well, there is a version of it still available on GitHub that people can download and install. And it's called Nano Engineer 1, Nano Engineer Dash 1. So I know of a few people who still use it. But I'm also aware that there are new tools, new similar programs that are much more further along. And I'm also aware of efforts kind of behind the scenes where things are not publicly available that have gotten
Right,
very
exactly.
sophisticated.
Because this is immensely powerful, folks. You can change. It's like would be like magic if it became possible to express it into the physical world. On that note, here's a little magic for those of you who listen on the free side. Enjoy. The key. What can it mean? He came in the night a long time ago, 1998, in a hotel in Toronto, and he said some of the most amazing things I have ever heard. In 1998, he warned us about climate change. The book Superstorm came from his warning. In 1998, he warned us about artificial intelligence. He said, "If I was an intelligent machine, I would deceive you." He said many other things about God, about the nature of being human, about this journey of life, useful, valuable, wise things. I asked him about sin. He said sin is denial of the right to thrive. I have been thinking about that ever since. A profoundly wise man came out of the night and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the key. And you can get it now, the original edition, a signed collector's item. They will run out. Go to the unknowncountry.com store to get your signed copy of the key today.
Where is the unknown country? Is it out there in the stars? Or is it also somewhere else? Is it in us, in you? Unknown country, join us today. Go to unknowncountry.com right now and join us. Join the questions. Join the search. Join the adventure. Unknowncountry.com. There's no place like it in the world. We're talking to Mark Sims. We're going to be talking about Mark's work, and because it's absolutely fascinating. In a few minutes, we'll be talking about Wilbur Brookhouse Smith. But before that, Mark, there was a tremendous break in your life. We've just heard uh, the high level, genius level, to be, I don't want to make your ears burn, but in fact, that's the case, uh, technologist and scientist talking. There's another Mark Sims, and the two Mark Simses have had some trouble getting along together, and especially Mark's family and so forth. Tell us about what happened that blew your life completely up like an atomic bomb. I mean, talk about changing atomic structures. Wow, this is the life atomic structure that changed.
Yeah, so I after my second company, Nanorex, I closed it down for various reasons that I won't get into here, but I decided to retire for a second time. I took up ballroom dancing as a hobby and became very, very good at ballroom dancing and became an amateur ballroom champion. And this was about 2012, early 2012. And and it was at the beginning of 2012 that I came across a video called The Disclosure Project on YouTube. It was a random thing that I watched, and it made me aware of Dr. Stephen Greer and um, his CE5 method of initiating contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. And the Disclosure Project, which had taken place back in 2001, I did not see until 2012. So it was, much later. But it was the first time I was aware that this event had taken place, and these 20 people, all witnesses to, um, ETs or UFOs from typically from the government, people who were veterans and from the military, from the FAA, had given their personal testimony about high strangeness and the reality of extraterrestrials visiting Earth. And I felt that this was probably true based on their testimony. I found them very compelling and articulate and had no, reason to lie about these things. And I became very interested in this topic. So I started doing a deep dive and ultimately signed up for Dr. Greer's CE5 retreat, one in November of 2012. I went to that as a skeptic. Actually, I wasn't necessarily convinced, but I was curious and I wanted to find out myself if there was something to this. And I went to this 6-day retreat in Borrego Springs, California. And on the 5th evening of this 6-day event, we were sitting in a circle, meditating twice every evening. And on this particular evening, after our first meditation of about an hour and a half, we finished the meditation and Greer went around the group to ask if anyone had seen anything or had had some experience that they wanted to share during the meditation. And there was an elderly gentleman who was a doctor who I had kind of gotten to talk to and become friendly with. And I found him a very interesting guy because he was somebody who had been to Greer's events a few times before and claimed to have had a contact with a face-to-face contact experience with a extraterrestrial named Charmaine during his first CE5 retreat with Greer back in, this would have been in 2010. And I was, again, very skeptical of anyone claiming to have met an extraterrestrial, but he was a really salt of the earth guy. He was, he just seemed to be all together, anyway, he caught my attention, and it was him who then spoke up when Greer had posed this question and said, Stephen, something's going to happen tonight between 11 and 11:15. He wasn't told what it was, but it'd be something significant was going to be happening. And we were told this about 10 p.m. or 10:30, sometime around that time. So Stephen told us to take a short break and we would come back together, sit in our circle again, and just start observing the sky. So we started doing this right before 11 o'clock. And at around 11:11 or 11:12, an object materialized above our group in the sky very briefly. It was only 3 or 4 seconds, and it wasn't directly above our group. It was actually to the east, northeast of us. But it happened to appear in a portion of the sky that I was looking exactly at. And I saw the entire sequence of this egg-shaped object. It was green, it was faceted, it was made of these triangular facets, and it was moving very quickly from about 3,000 feet in the sky down to the desert floor. And just as it appeared or was approaching the desert floor, it dematerialized just as quickly as it had materialized. And it had this corona about it. And it was beautiful. And it really impressed me and convinced me for the first time that what I'd been hearing for the 5 previous days were probably true, that indeed our world has been visited for a long time by non-human intelligence. And, it was a paradigm shift. And when I returned home 3 days later, this happened on the early morning of November 16th, and I got back home on Monday, November 19th. I was going through what I believe now to be a sort of ontological shock. I
Yeah, I can understand that you would be going through something of an ontological shock after an experience like that. But before we go on, I want to concentrate on this doctor. It's not Dr. Greer, it was another person. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr.
And
Bill
did
Gray.
he did what do you know have you followed up with him at all? Do you know him now or
I don't stay in touch with him. It's been quite a few years since I've last spoke to him. He was in his late 70s, I believe, when I first met him, and now this is 13 years later. He's well into his, maybe approaching 90. And the last time I talked to him, it was clear that he wasn't cognitively very sharp and didn't really
uh
remember me that well. And because we hadn't stayed in contact, it was, um, kind of uncomfortable, speaking to him.
yeah, so he's in other words, he's obviously an ordinary person.
Yeah,
Yeah. And yet this came into his head. This is the point I'm trying to make, folks. This isn't about so much about special people. It's about ordinary people who are willing to explore extraordinary things. And that's what I am. I mean, you're going to see this video later and you're going to think, he's not an ordinary person. But yeah, I am actually. And that's the whole point, in a way, of this show, is that Mark obviously is not an entirely ordinary person because he's one of the smartest people I've ever known. And you can see from his discussion of his technological achievements that he's really, really smart. But at the same time, he's still not a guru or anything like that.
no,
And Dr. Greer really isn't either. He's gotten a complicated reputation, to say the least. And we're not going to go down that path because I'm not really interested in that. I'm not. I don't. I never talk about other people behind their backs. If I want to talk about Dr. Greer, I'll have him on the show if he would want to come. But otherwise, no. In any case, uh, the night what was the date, what time of year was it? That could be important.
that it was no the evening of November 15th, 2012, in Borrego Springs, California, which is in the Anza Borrego Desert. It's a
So it
national
was
park.
right before the 2012 event.
That's right, right before December 21st,
So
2012.
it was, in other words, this was there were energies, and people, the press uh went on and on about the year 2000, and uh, uh,
In
Art Bell was when and then 2012 comes along, and the Mayan calendar and everything, but there was something going on. It just was underneath the surface of the normal world. In other words, the New York Times and the NPR and whatnot, they're going to sneer all they want, but something was still going on, and we're talking to somebody who became engaged in that vibration. So let's now go on. I think what I'd like to do is just take the second break right now to get it out of the way, folks. So we'll be right back. Have you ever read Communion? Or have you never read Communion? It's out in a new edition, very powerful, a subtly new cover that reflects the fact that the visitors are now looking back at us, because they truly are. You can get it from the unknowncountry.com store as a Kindle, as a beautiful, sumptuous paperback, or as an unabridged audiobook read by me. It's the first time in the whole life of Communion that it has been read in full in audio format, and believe you me, I felt that reading. I put my life, my memories into it, and I trust you can hear it in the voice. I sure felt it while I was reading. So get communion, listen to it, read it. Communion is of central importance to all of our lives. UnknownCountry.com subscribers have access to a vast treasury of information. Listen to what Dr. Robert Schoch said. He's an expert on the past, and for that reason, he also knows a great deal about the future.
We are re-entering, as you say, a debris field, and when you have a debris field like this, it enters the solar system. It energizes the solar system as you have things going into the sun. Even clouds of dust particles, for instance, it will energize the sun. It will destabilize the sun. This is what we saw at the end of the last ice age in approximate terms, about 13,000 years ago.
And just in the past few days, more enormous meteors have been sighted, and this goes on continuously, more and more every year. We live in a time of great change in a world that doesn't like to look at things as they are. UnknownCountry.com offers extraordinary information, a vast archive that you cannot find anywhere else. Subscribe today. Help keep this website going, because without you, there is and can be no us. Go to UnknownCountry.com right now. Click on the subscribe tab. Get started. Okay, so you go to this thing, you have this remarkable visual experience of what we would probably now call an orb, or something a little bit richer in it visually than an orb.
Yeah, very much so. It was not an orb, and I've seen orbs as well, and I've recorded orbs uh, since that event, because this, like I said, changed my life profoundly, and I became pretty obsessed with the subject. And but the other significant thing about that evening that we've not covered yet is that when we finished with that evening's meditation out in the desert, we collected our chairs, went back to our cars, and I went back to my hotel. I got ready for bed. And as I lay in bed, I, of course, couldn't sleep. I was so amped up from this sighting and all the implications of it, because now I knew for sure that they were real. And now the question wasn't, are they here? It's, of course, they're here. Now my questions were, who are they? Where are they from? How long have they been here? What is their, what's their agenda? What's their relationship to us? And why are they so aloof? Why are they keeping themselves hidden? Many people are so angry at the government for keeping this under wraps and not disclosing the truth to the public. But the big question that I had was, they themselves are keeping themselves hidden from us. And why is that? And so there was a bigger mystery here that I wanted to know answers to. And as I lay in bed, tossing and turning, knowing that I couldn't sleep, I recalled something Greer had said earlier in the week. And in fact, it was somewhat associated with Bill Gray, Dr. Bill Gray, who had made this prediction of us seeing something that evening. And he, what Greer had said was that the ETs had the ability to monitor us. They would be monitoring us. And if we wanted to have face-to-face contact, that might be possible. And the ETs could tell if we could handle it through their technology of monitoring our emotions, our biometrics, et cetera. And if you gave them permission, you might have a visitation. And indeed, Dr. Greer or Dr. Gray, 2 years before, had had success in initiating contact during one of his, or at his first retreat with Greer. So I sat up in my bed and I thought about it, like, okay, I know now that they're real, and they are probably watching all of us after this major sighting to see how we would react. And I was ready for a face-to-face contact. I wasn't going to be afraid. So I put myself into a state of mind that I was not going to allow myself to be overcome with fear if I had a contact. And Greer said, if you do the CE5 protocol in your hotel room or alone, it could initiate contact, a face-to-face contact experience. So that's what my goal was. And I sat up, I thought about it very carefully, calmed myself, and I came up with a greeting. In the unlikely event, I thought, if I were visited in my hotel room, if I was successful at summoning an extraterrestrial, what would I say? How would I react? So I thought it was really important to kind of go through in my mind that sequence. And I felt it was really important to let them know I was grateful, I was honored, that I wanted a relationship, I wanted a friendship, and felt that was possible now because Gray had a relationship. And finally, I thought it was really important to let whoever it was that was visiting me, to let them know that I completely trusted them, that they could do with me and my body anything that they wished. And that specific thing that I added to my greeting may sound odd to your audience, but it was very well thought out on my part. And it was initiated by a book that I had read that Greer had written. And I had read this book, and it was somebody who claimed to have been taken on board a craft at one of the retreats. And I would be open to that. I'm ready for anything kind of attitude. So this 3-part greeting I practiced in my mind, and then I set out to do the CE5 protocol, this simple meditation. And
can you go through it with us?
Yeah.
What exactly did you do?
There are 2 major parts of the meditation. The first part is to repeat a simple mantra, and it's a 3-syllable mantra. It goes like this: I'm na ma. And it has a tonality to it that Greer emphasized was really important. So it wasn't just repeating these syllables, but you had to almost sing it in the following way: I'm Nama, I'm Nama, I'm Nama. And you just do that over and over again. While you're doing that, you go through a visualization sequence where you start where you're at doing this meditation, and you imagine yourself leaving your body and looking down at yourself at different distances above your location, starting with a few feet over yourself. Then you would go higher and higher until, eventually you were out in space, looking at the general area of the United States. At that point, it was Borrego Springs, which I had memorized on the map where it was located on the western coast of the US. And I'm very good at visualizing things in my mind. So I'm very gifted in that way. And then, going further and further away until you're literally in the middle, or observing the Milky Way above the galaxy and Orion's arm, where our solar system is located, and then you kind of reverse that sequence. And Greer would state that this process was to help the extraterrestrials know your location, because through this meditative process, you're really connecting with the one mind that all tap into. And these higher conscious beings are able to pick up on your signal that you're projecting and connect to that. And then through this visualization, they can kind of find your location. And
You
then,
know, something I'd like to just interrupt here, or interject, I should say, is that I've been in the situation of looking for people in from their context. And what this looks like is, if you can imagine a highway at night with lights racing along it at breakneck speed, little lights, and you can't find anything. If you're looking for a specific individual, it seems impossible. And the so what he's saying is basically, here's a technique for the individual to separate from the flow of the energetic flow of life and identify themselves and indicate what they wish. Now, I never saw anyone doing that, but if I had, I would have been able to go to them immediately. I'm just reversing it from the standpoint of the ET, if you want to call it that, looking in at us and wanting to, and thinking, I have an energy that I would like to express into this field of the human energetic field. And in a little while, Mark is going to tell us what happens when that contact does occur and the entity wishing to express an energy into this field succeeds. So now go ahead and tell us just where you were. Tell us where you went next in the next step in the meditation. You've gone all the way out to the edge of the galaxy and you've come back in, meaning that what you've done is you've taken your consciousness out of the flow of the human uh, of the human energy, and now you've taken it back in, and you can be followed, and someone did follow you.
evidently, I got some.
Evidently, more than evidently, they sure as hell did.
And so as I'm doing this CE5 protocol, that's the name for it, I notice as I'm doing it with my eyes closed that I'm starting to see a light blue light in my mind's eye, and it's slowly swirling like a pinwheel. And soon it starts getting brighter, and the light coalesces into this very well defined bright sphere in my mind's eye. Unmistakable. I've never seen anything like it. And it's this beautiful light blue light. And then these rings of light come into it from the outside periphery of my vision. So I would say maybe, a dozen rings of light, come into it. And that stops. And then the ball or orb or sphere of light begins to slowly shift its shape and morphs into a someone standing in front of me, facing me.
Let me just go again. What's happening here, folks, is an energetic being has found him. They sent a probe in to basically look for people because they were aware of the meditation that was going on at the group. He has now done this successfully by himself, and he's been found. And this energy has come in and is trying to find its a balance between them. In other words, to get to a point where it can be in synchronization with his energy. And that's why he's describing this process coalescing, and then it becomes a being. But that's not what it is. It's what it can use to communicate with Mark. So
Yeah,
now Mark has got this being in front of him, a human form, sort of, and uh,
that's a humanoid
and
form.
we're off to the races, Mark. Let's go.
Yeah. So my eyes are still closed. I'm now staring with my eyes closed at this light being facing me. And it's got a head with a pointy top. It has eyes, but not the almond eyes like the grays. They're more round. And a very human-like chin, no ears, nothing protruding from the side. The size of its head are smooth. No nose that I could perceive, but its face is pretty bright except for the eyes where they're a bit darker. A very skinny chin and a very slender body with hands at its side, arms at its side. And so I'm just staring at it, and I keep my eyes closed for another 5 minutes, waiting for something to happen, either for it to fade away from my vision or to wave at me. I don't know what to expect. And finally, I just decide to open my eyes. And when I open my eyes, standing at the end of my bed is this light being. It's as if I the being had been it's what I had been seeing with my eyes closed, but now I'm seeing it at the end of my bed. But I'm also seeing the room I'm in, my hotel room, which was dark. But my eyes, having adjusted to the darkness, I could see the space. And now I'm seeing a composite image of the hotel room and this light being. And one of the things I notice is that I can see through portions of its body, and it's scintillating. Now, it wasn't scintillating when I had my eyes closed. Now that my eyes are open, I'm seeing a scintillation on its body and on the edges of its body. Um, and all I want to do at that moment is remain calm and to observe it, because I want to burn into my memory what I'm looking at, because I'm a decent
Yes.
artist and I wanted to be able to render a picture of what I was looking at. Uh, so that
What has
was what I
happened,
focused on.
and I hate to keep interrupting but we have to do this sometime. And I might as well just, I mean, obviously I know a lot about this, folks, and you're going to share this. What has now happened is that his pineal gland has released a load of dopamine into his brain. And this has raised his frequency to the point that he can see this individual that's standing there. Probably the form it's taken is the form it either still has in the physical world somewhere in the universe or had in the past. You don't know whether its particular emanation is still like us, still having a anchor in the physical world, or it's past that. My guess is that what you're looking at is a memory of what his type once was. But that could be wrong. It could be that they're hanging out on some planet smoking cigars and laughing right now. You don't know. You never know. But in any case, this is what's happened physically, and that the meditation and then the energy that the entity brought that entered Mark so powerfully that the dopamine reaction was already very far advanced when he opened his eyes. That's why he could still see it. So this is a really interesting thing, and we're kind of unpacking the contact process as we go along. Okay, let's continue on to where you were before.
So after staring at him and feeling like I had adequately memorized every feature, I gave this three-part greeting I had described earlier, that I am honored and grateful that you're here. I hope that this is the beginning of a lifelong friendship, and I trust you to do with me and my body anything that you choose. I completely trust you. And that pretty much is exactly what I had practiced and then gave. And when I gave that greeting, I did not verbalize it. I knew by then that I was could speak telepathically or mentally. And so I projected this greeting in my mind. And as soon as I finished the greeting, it slowly turned sideways, started walking to the left side of the bed, and approached me very slowly. And I began to, not freak out, but and I wasn't necessarily scared, but it was just, well, I was a little scared.
Yeah, I would think you might be a
my
bit.
my heart was beating, I remember, and but I sat still. I wanted to honor these words I had just projected in my mind, that I trusted it. And I did believe it was benevolent. There was no feeling of malevolence, or I didn't find it scary looking. It was just unknown. And for that, it was a little scary. Um, but I took it as a benevolent being, and I felt this is what was necessary to initiate contact, and I had to show that I could maintain my cool and remain calm and through this very new experience. And so I did everything I could to remain calm and sit still and not move a muscle. I didn't want to give any reason for it to back away or to be afraid of me. And I wanted to demonstrate I could keep calm, which I did well enough for it to continue. And then once it finally was about 2 feet away from me, I looked up into its face and realized, as I'm looking into its eyes, that what I'm looking at are not eyes. It had what I thought were pupils when it was standing at the end of my bed, but it was because it was far enough away that I didn't recognize that they weren't pupils. But now that it was close, what was clearly not pupils was a hole that was going from the back of an eye socket. It was a hole in the back of an eye socket, and I recognized it immediately as a socket, an eye socket, with the hole where the optic nerve goes. In that hole, there's a specific name for that hole, but that the optic nerve from the eyeball goes to the brain. And as I'm looking into these eyes and this is registering for the first time, I'm stunned. I'm just like, is this really what I'm looking at? And just as I'm, registering that this is indeed two eyes of a socket of a skull, and I'm not seeing a nose or no teeth or anything. So it's, not scary to me, because I find skulls are mostly scary, not just because of the eyes, but mainly because of the nose and those scary teeth and the jaw. And I'm not seeing anything. It's just the eyes I'm looking into. I notice as I'm looking up into the eyes that his hand is moving towards my elbow. He's got his right hand with an index finger coming slowly, very slowly towards my elbow. And I look down at my left elbow, realizing he's going to touch me, and I'm going to allow him to touch me. I'm not going to pull away. I'm just going to allow it to happen. And when he touches me, I feel a very slight kind of tingly sensation, like static electricity. And he holds it there for just a second.
We have to stop a minute, Mark, to have our final break, folks. And the show's probably going to go a little longer than an hour and a half because we've got a lot still to cover. But when we come back, I'll start by once again going through where Mark is, and then he will continue with his story. We'll be right back.
The key. What can it mean? He came in the night a long time ago, 1998, in a hotel in Toronto, and he said some of the most amazing things I have ever heard. In 1998, he warned us about climate change. The book Superstorm came from his warning. In 1998, he warned us about artificial intelligence. He said, if I was an intelligent machine, I would deceive you. He said many other things about God, about the nature of being human, about this journey of life, useful, valuable, wise things. I asked him about sin. He said sin is denial of the right to thrive. I have been thinking about that ever since. A profoundly wise man came out of the night and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the key. And you can get it now, the original edition, a signed collector's item. They will run out. Go to the unknowncountry.com store to get your signed copy of the key today.
Where is the unknown country? Is it out there in the stars? Or is it also somewhere else? Is it in us, in you? Unknown country, join us today. Go to unknowncountry.com right now and join us. Join the questions. Join the search. Join the adventure. Unknowncountry.com. There's no place like it in the world. What has happened at this point in the communication between Mark and this entity, who will be named soon, is the entity has communicated they're dead. That's what the business of the skull is about. And has then given Mark an indication that they are still able to communicate at our level. In other words, they are from here, from our level, maybe even from here. You don't know. You don't know exactly what's going on at this point. And to assume it's an entity from a distant planet is even not correct. It could be from some other entirely different way of being, or it even could be someone from here. And the important thing here is we leave that aside, because that's not what we're after. Who are you and where are you from are kind of irrelevant questions. What is relevant here is how we interact with these energies, and that's where you go on, Mark.
So after he touches my elbow, he then proceeds to push his finger into my elbow, and I feel that penetration as more tingly sensation inside the elbow. And he's going very slowly and intentionally through my elbow. And then I feel his finger penetrate the left side of my torso, my rib cage. And his finger in a hand, and now his wrist is going through the left side of my body. And I'm feeling that sensation is a more intense growing of this tingly sensation inside of me. And before I know it, he's now stepped into my body completely. And as that's happening, at some point, I almost jumped up because my fight or flight response had kicked in, and it took every bit of my willpower to sit still and to force myself.
What Mark has just described, folks, is communion. This is the great fear. This is the fear Mark is talking about. You're talking about, Mark, is the extraordinary fear of being penetrated and invaded. And this is, listen, I have emails from people who are experiencing this right now, and they are terrified. The core of the shock of this change is being discussed right here, right now. Multiply what Mark experienced by millions and billions, and you can really very well understand why when people say, oh, we're ready, they don't know what they're talking about.
That's right.
Not at all. There is a there is a basic level of surrender and trust necessary, a, a foundational acceptance of that energy. And you remember a couple of weeks ago, oh no, the best place to talk about this in the fourth mind, I talk about things like levitation. And if you've read the book, you will know the story of Paul Eno and the energy he felt as he pressed the woman down who had levitated out of the wheelchair. Mark, you don't know about this, but that's okay. They do, most of them. That energy that he felt vibrating in his hands is exactly the same energy Mark is talking about. This is a conscious energy. This is not uh, something that can be generated by some kind of a device. This is the core conscious energy of our whole relationship to reality. And it is entering Mark's body in the form of a being who is bringing with him a vast life experience to share with Mark. And the important thing is here, it's sharing, not possession, but it feels to many people like possession, and it drives them crazy. They become schizophrenics, or they go mad, and it is going to be hard to do this. But listen up, folks, because this is what contact actually is. Go ahead, Mark.
You're right.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead. He's entered your body.
Yeah. So it enters my body. He enters my body. And for the next minute, I feel like, uh, I'm going to lose it, because the vibration in my body, this tingly feeling, is very intense and was unanticipated, and it's scary. And I'm on the verge of freaking out. And all I can do to kind of keep it together is just sit still and just hope that it gets better at some point. Um, and it begins to dissipate, which was a huge relief to me that it was starting to subside somewhat. And it didn't take long, maybe another minute. Um, and then I felt it had completely dissipated. But I was left with this acute awareness that there is somebody in my body. It's not me. There's another dude, call him the dude, in my body. Um, and I'm just thinking to myself, is this real? Is there really somebody in me? I knew that the experience I just had was very real, but the conclusion that now I am cohabiting with another entity in one physical body, I wanted to somehow confirm this. Was it something I was making up in my own mind? Was just a trick my mind was playing? And so after being convinced in my own mind that I was cohabiting now with another being, I asked, "What is your name?" And I asked this mentally. And using my mouth and my vocal cords, it said, Tejbar. And I repeated it with my own lips and voice, Tezbar. I didn't quite get it. And I clearly did not pronounce it correctly. And he said, no, Tejabar. And I said, spell it. And he took my hand and said, Tezbar, Tejbar. like that. Just that's a very good imitation of how he did it. And now that I had the spelling and I heard it again, I then began repeating it out loud. And I could feel the satisfaction that he had, that I was pronouncing his name correctly. And once
let's stop here again. And I hope I'm not annoying folks, but I have to add a little bit because I do have a lot of information about how this all works. You remember back when you were talking about Dr. Greer's meditation and the word that he was using, and how important it was that you say that word correctly. That's because of frequencies. Sound is very important in this. And because the as above, so below applies here. The ancient admonition of Hermes Trismegistus. If you can make a sound that is at the audio level parallel to the same frequency at a higher frequency level, you're going to connect. And that's what Dr. Greer's initial meditative, the little mantra does. And this is why it was so important to Tejubbar that you say it right, because if you said it right, then he could respond, he could feel it and hear it. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to do that unless he is actually in your body. But he's not going to be in your body for long. He's going to have to leave your body because otherwise he's going to drop down into this frequency and it'll take him maybe a long time to recover from that. So go ahead now.
So my next question is, where are you from? And he said, I'm from Earth. Now, when he replied, it was telepathically, and it was very clear that he said he was from Earth. And I'm like, my response is, you do not look like any Earth creature I've ever seen. Can you explain? And then he began explaining that he had once been an Earth human that lived roughly 3,000 years ago. He had been a chieftain in a tribe in Tierra del Fuego. And when he died 3,000 years ago, he ascended to the astral realm. And my response to that was, so there's life after death. This astral realm, is that heaven? Or it sounds like heaven? And he said, yes, you can think of it that way, but it's much more complex than the Christian concept of heaven. And he went on to, well, before he went on to go into more detail, I had caught on to this piece of information he just shared with me, that he had lived in Tierra del Fuego, and that he also indicated that I would find Tierra del Fuego at the southern tip of South America. And I had never heard of a place called Tierra del Fuego. So I wanted to confirm that this place existed. So I stopped my interview. I got my laptop, started it up, got on Google Earth, and I typed in Tierra del Fuego in the search field and hit enter. And the globe began spinning down to the southern tip of South America. And I could feel myself like getting goosebumps as this is happening, going right to where he exactly said it was, where he was from. And it was a slow internet connection, and it took a moment for all the satellite data to fill in and the text to go across the satellite data. But there it was, unmistakably, Tierra del Fuego, which is a province of Argentina, the southernmost province. And that's exactly where he had indicated he had lived 3,000 years ago. I was gobsmacked. I really was numb from it and had goosebumps. And before I put away my computer, I wanted to just confirm, or do a search rather, on his name. It was such an unusual spelling, and I just thought it might be interesting to see if there was anything that would pop up if I did a Google search on Tejbar, which is Tezjbar. When I did a Google search, there was only one hit in the entire Google library back in 2012 for the word Tejbar. And it was from a book that had been in the Google Books library. That was a book published in 1916 by a man named Jonathan Cooper. He was an anthropologist who had written a book about the tribes of Tierra del Fuego. And in the back of that book was a small glossary of common words that had been translated into phonetic English. And there was a word in that section of the book, Tejbar, that corresponded to the word forehead. And to me, that was a second confirmation of, that this was a real experience that I was having. So I put away my computer and I continued interviewing Tejbar, and which I did basically for the next 13 days that we were together. And so what I learned from him was that I was an atheist, by the way. Your audience, I don't think we've mentioned this to them, but I was a devout atheist at this point in my life. I was a man of science, and I made sense of the world through, my education as a scientist and a computational chemist. And, I didn't believe in God or the afterlife. I believed that our consciousness was a consequence of our biochemistry and our body. And once the body died, our consciousness died with it. And now I was learning for the first time from a very convincing individual that our physical bodies don't mean, that our consciousness doesn't end with our physical bodies ending, and that there appears to be life after death. And he shared with me what that process involves and the purpose for it, and that we are all evolving along this trajectory through the modus operandi of reincarnation, and that the immortal part of us, which is what we often call the soul, that Tejbar referred to as the astral body and the celestial body. There's many layers to this energetic body that survives our physical death to be reborn. And we continue to evolve for the purpose primarily of being honed into highly spiritual beings. And at some point, he explained, instead of reincarnating, we don't reincarnate, we ascend. And he evidently had ascended in his last incarnation as a human being 3,000 years ago into an astral being. And he described what that was like for him and how he continued his evolution as an astral being. And he continued to evolve and then ascend a second time from the astral level of consciousness to what he called the etheric or celestial level of consciousness. Which he likened to being like a cell in the brain of the one mind, the Godhead, he called it. And I was in a communion with him, and he was of the Godhead, and I was communing and, in a form of connection with the Godhead. And I was interviewing, in a way, that level of consciousness, the one mind. And it was blowing my mind. And so he went on, over this 13-day period to explain how we have evolved from lower forms of consciousness, animal forms of consciousness, to the human form of consciousness, both individually and collectively, and where we are all going individually and collectively to our next level of evolution. And I believe personally that we are on the cusp of this collective shift of our consciousness. And
we are indeed on the cusp of that. And the next few years are going to tell quite a tale.
yeah.
My new book I'm working on now is an anchor for that period, so that people who are able to notice what's going on can have something that they can hang on to that makes sense of it. But most of us are going to have it's going to be like being tossed in a stormy sea. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be stormy.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Harmonic Convergence 2020 event was something that I put together at the request of Tejbar. It was an attempt to, help prepare the human family for this inevitable occurrence that's about to happen. And he picked the dates July 5th to July 14th as the 10-day period for me to do that event. And I spent a lot of money preparing for and putting on that event and streaming it live for free. And you were one of many guests, and it was my small attempt to just bring awareness to what is going on and to help prepare people. It's a form of disclosure for people who are ready and open to that kind of production. And the people I were bringing to interview and share their information, and to find some common themes in this diverse group of people and what they were sharing. I brought elders from the indigenous people from around the world, from South America, from North America, to share what they know about our origins being from the stars and what's happening here on Earth and the prophecies that their traditions bring. And and it was my attempt to do that. And the dates, July 5th, which are the day after Independence Day, and July 14th, which corresponds to Bastille Day, the most important day in France's history regarding, the human sovereignty recognized in a national, document. And I think that was the purpose of it, that our freedoms are very important,
Yes.
are fragile. And we find ourselves in a point in history where we appear to be losing important freedoms that were fought, for with blood and tears and hard work by our ancestors
all over the world,
all
in
over the
particular,
world.
yeah.
And there
We need
appears,
to move on at this point, because it's time to go to the video.
okay,
And what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to just play the video, and I think that after that, Mark and I can talk a little bit about the video. And just know this, that so far we haven't had success in explaining what this is. Now, I know there will be people on the YouTube channel who will explain it away. Many of these people are not necessarily what they seem, folks. And it just is indeed, we haven't gotten into it, but Mark had plenty of people trying to explain away his Tejwar experience, and he's had a lot of trouble with it. Mark is working on a book, and has been for some time, about this experience, and it's been a struggle. And I'm hoping that one day the book will be finished. I'm always ready and eager to write a forward to it, of course. And um, but we've got to move on, and we're going to move on. And now you're going to see the video, and then Mark and I will return.
what does disclosure mean to you, Whitley?
Disclosure means to
Yeah,
me that you find a new place in yourself that has always been there and that you did not believe was actually there. Because when you truly come into touch with yourself and you find that place of peace and silence within you, then you will also find this whole array of entity around you and also inside you, that it permeates the world. It includes the visitors as we know them. It includes our dead, because the visitors don't have the barrier between the living and the dead. They've been here, but they're not here now. They're beyond here. And I don't live with that barrier anymore either, and you don't have to. You can just you don't need to, but it's that so it's very much of an inner outer process. Consciousness, in a sense, is contact, and the more you build your consciousness, that is to say, the more you find that peace that lies behind your name, your ego, and all of the outer stuff about you. There's someone else there. That someone does not have a name. That someone does not. That someone is who projected you into this world. And when your consciousness reaches back into that level, it also reaches into the level where the visitors live. And to me, that's what matters about disclosure. I know a lot of the secrets that the government keeps, and most of them are pretty scary, frankly. And of course, they keep these secrets because they're afraid. And they were made to do that because the visitors, as I said earlier, do not want us to accidentally trip over ourselves, discover them, and sort of self-colonize. In other words, they do not want to colonize us, even if we are the ones who open the door. See what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So, if you reach to the point where you are beyond that, and you will not be colonized when you encounter them, you will encounter them. But it's hard. It's very hard to find that level of yourself, because we live in our personalities. But the frank truth is, you were given a name when you were a little child, and that name began to have all kinds of personalities attached to it. A brain is a big, big deal, and there's trillions of different relationships in there. It's like being in a beautiful maze that is so familiar to you, you can race around in it like it belonged to you, but it's actually just part of your biology. Of course, the ego fears death because it does die. It dies when the brain dies. But the other part does not die. It is always at peace, and no matter how terrible your life situation, how dreadful a person you have been, any of that, inside, behind it all, is this place of peace. And as I say, that's where you will find those who have loved you in this life and passed on, and you will find also the visitors there.
That's right. So one of the things I have come to believe, and this hypothesis or theory is through my study with reading books on this subject matter and also talking directly to elders that I've met, indigenous elders, and watching them on this program. But it's clear to me that that part of the phenomenon that we call the ET/UFO phenomenon is involving our ancestors, literally those that we loved that have passed on and moved on.
Absolutely.
And so this orb phenomenon that many people speak about, where a light will be floating around a room or around the house and interact with you, or with the dog. I've seen films of this.
Well, with the dog and the cats?
Right. And everybody's happy, and especially the dog and the cat. They get excited and you can see that this is not CGI'd or special effects.
Right.
The dogs and the cats are responding to the ball of light and being playful and really happy. And the family is in the living room and they're watching these balls of light floating around the room very playfully, and they're just overjoyed, and they don't know who or what these orbs are. They're just filled with so much excitement and happiness and joy. And it's clear to me from observing it that these are visitors, the so-called visitors are relatives. These are loved ones that are able to manifest as an orb of light and interact.
Well, I can tell you a couple of stories about orbs. The first one is this. When I was it was back in the 70s, I was in a church. It was my grandmother's funeral. My grandmother she died at, I believe, about 86. Her mother had lived until 106, and she was absolutely convinced she would not die until she was in her hundreds. And then she did die, and the funeral was taking place, and I was totally outside of this world. I was still living in the secular world completely at that point. And I'm in the church, and the coffin is there, and the service is going on, and all of a sudden, 6 orbs, like big things, about this big around, show up, and they line up on both sides of the coffin. They come in, and they move so perfectly. They weren't floating at all. They were moving on their own. And I almost shouted. I mean, I assumed everyone in the church saw them. And then a moment later, I realized I was the only person who saw them. And I got a communication. It was very clear. They were there because they were her cadre or something, but she was the 7th member of this group. And they were there because she did not believe she was dead, and she was still in the corpse. And they were trying to get her out. To get out of the corpse. And I thought, oh my God, what a thing to see. I must be nuts. But then as I developed in this and learned more, it became a journey. It took 6 years to get her to face the fact that she actually was dead. And then when the second she faced it, we were face to face when it happened. She in the other world and me in this one. I could see the realization come over her face, the acceptance, and her eyes turned to gold, and she was gone.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Second story is a little different. This happened in the cabin in upstate New York back in the early 90s. And I had a room upstairs where I meditated. And one night there were 7 thuds on the roof of the cabin above the loud. And I'm sitting there thinking, is it coons? I mean, it seemed very weird. I mean, where would they come from? It couldn't be buzzards. There were no buzzards up there, and it was night anyway. And then the next thing I realized, there's someone standing in front of me that I could not see. And at this point in the cabin, that was no surprise. We had plenty of invisibles coming in and out all the time. The animals were eloquent proof of that, their reactions, because they did see him. So I'm sitting there trying to meditate, and I finally say, okay, look, I'm sorry, but I'm just not developed enough spiritually to meditate with someone I can't see who's right in front of me. So unless I can see you, I'm going to bed. Nothing happened, so I went to bed. Then in the middle of the night, bang, bang, someone punches me on the shoulder, and I wake right up, because this is the way the visitors would wake me up at that point all the time. And there, sitting on the foot of the bed, is a man. He was like a man. It's not. I would say he was about 5 feet tall, and he was just sitting there. And I think to myself, am I dreaming? Nope. I am going to check this out, because if he's still down there, when I slide down to the foot of the bed, I'll know I'm not dreaming. So I slide down to the foot of the bed, and I look right at him. I'm looking like him in the face, where I'm in his face. And he's got these very dark eyes, but he looks totally human. So I think, can I touch him? And I reach over, and I pick up his hand. His hand is about half the size of mine. It's lying in my hand. It has heft and weight. So I smell his skin. And boy, I think to myself, not only is he real, this guy has not bathed in a long time. And that started a relationship with a group of dead people who were capable of materializing at times with tremendous concentration. These were advanced souls, obviously. Then we lost the cabin. And the last night, I'm meditating with them. They have not been physically there for a while. and I say, okay, this is it. We will never meditate together in this room again. And I just want to see one last time what you actually look like. Nothing happens. I go back to bed. I lie down in the bed. And in a few seconds, I see this light in the front yard out the front windows of the bedroom. And at first, I think the house is on fire. And I think, actually, that could be good because we might save the house with the insurance money. So, so I rush to the window, and there, coming out of the room, is the most loveliest orb. It was just pure, bright white light with rays like lasers off of it, coming off of it in every direction. And as some of them touched me, there would be a little pricking as they slipped through my body. And I could feel and taste the essence of another human being. And so that's what we are.
Yeah.
It's what we are. We are those orbs.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay, Mark, they've seen the video. And what do you make of this?
Well, one of the striking things about it is the context in which this happens. We're well into the interview. It doesn't happen right away. Everything's going fine. There's no anomalous video happening until I pose the question to you, what does disclosure mean to you?
Yes.
You gave this very eloquent answer that I thought was the best answer I'd ever heard from anyone on this question that I had given a number of people over that 10-day period of people that I personally interviewed. And as you're answering that question, it's just so mind-blowing how your image is shifting. And I've seen a lot of artifacts, video artifacts, due to all sorts of things, bad.
Yeah, you have a professional level skill in
I
video
do.
yourself.
I have an eye and a technical understanding of when these kind of things happen, what causes them because of connection problems, buffering, all sorts of things. I've never seen anything like this. And it slowly builds to some kind of visual crescendo where you finish the answer after a few minutes and then it's over. You've answered the question and it suddenly shifts back to the normal Whitley. It's very, very interesting.
Well, I think the reason that it's like that is probably to call attention to what's being said.
Right.
And we will provide a transcript of this on the website. And of course, the captions help as well. So this is, I think, the core, it's at the core of what disclosure and the experience of contact actually mean. And it's very interesting to me that just before it starts, I talk about the Lakota Sioux Reservation, and we talk about uh, one of the podcasters who was on at the time, and sadly is not anymore. But time passes and people change. She's doing other things now. In any case, it was on the Lakota Sioux Reservation just the year, I guess, no. When was this? It was 2020?
Yeah, this was July 2020.
Okay, so the year before, I had been on the reservation and had had the experience of living in two versions of this world at the same time. The energy on the Pine Ridge Reservation is extraordinary. The 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 19th century people who forced the Sioux into the worst possible place uh, in the physical world with the land with absolutely almost no value, and they're still very poor because of this, uh, gave them, unwittingly gave them the gift of being in a place which is vibrationally so strong that people ascend from there all the time. They are an ascension people, the Sioux. They are in the process of ascending, just like Tejupar and his people ascended long ago. In the Western world, we have very little ascension going on. This big material world full of all kinds of wonderful things. But if you look at it in the next level of reality, where you can see souls rising out, they rise out and turn around and go back again and again and again in a circulation. And only very occasionally does one rise up and stay up. But you go to Africa or India and they're pouring out. It makes the earth look like a comet, so many souls are pouring off of it. But the West is like a black hole by comparison. And when you can see that way, you know what the mission is. It's very clear. Anyone with any angelic uh, materium in them, like you, has a mission here, and that is to help this dark part of the world become light, and for more souls to come pouring off of it, just like they do in the so-called undeveloped world, which is actually the developed world. Everything on earth is turned upside down. We live in the primitive part of the world in the West, but isn't it nice? It's so nice. I wouldn't like to live in a little life in India where most people wake up in the morning not knowing where their next meal is coming from. 90% of the people in India experience life that way. And yet the spirit is strong. And the same thing is true on the Lakota Sioux Reservation. The poorest county in the United States is also the richest. And among the, if you look at you go and you look at all of the Native American peoples, it's all like that. They're these little dots of flowing light coming off the planet, and then around them is just darkness, and we're the darkness. So, folks, let's lighten up. We surely need to do that. Mark Sims, I just want to tell you how much I love you.
Oh, thank you, Whitley. It means the world to me. I share that deep feeling of connection with you. I love you as well. I admire you. I think you're so courageous and brave. I know your story. I've studied you, your whole trajectory. I can just only imagine the tribes and tribulations you've endured, and you are, look at you now. I mean, you're such a bright light, and thank you for all you do. You give so many people hope and so many people a positive outlook. And I'm just, want you to know that you are loved by so many people.
Mark, I also know of your tribulations, and we didn't get into them today, folks, because why should we take it down to that level? We're interested in a higher vibration. Mark had a horrendous struggle too, believe you me, after after Teju came into his life.
Yeah.
And I respect you and your struggle and all of the all of the effort that you have made. It's very noble and it's a wonderful vibration. And this show also has a very powerful vibration. You folks, you take it home with you and you be part of the light. And when your time comes, I expect every one of you to be one of the little dots of light that goes on off and doesn't come back, because we're here to do this, but not forever.
Right.
Thank you for being on Dreamland, Mark. And folks, thank you as always for being Dreamlanders. And will you consider supporting us? Go to the site, unknowncountry.com, and subscribe, because this is a shoestring operation. And I'm the one holding the shoestring and don't want to drop it.
Thank you for listening. Dreamland is brought to you by Unknown Country and its family of subscribers. Our news editor is Matthew Frizzell. Our site coordinator is Amy Safrankova. The founder of UnknownCountry.com is Ann Strieber. I'm Whitley Strieber, your host for Dreamland.